Set the Table, Episode 6, in which we are going to take a deeper dive into D&D 5th Edition. I am John, and with me, as always, is my co-host Jack.
Hey, how's it going, eh?
And if you are an audio listener, don't worry about it. And if you are checking this out on YouTube, you'll notice that we are not in the video tonight. We have had some different situations for this week, and so this is going to be an audio only episode, but we're still here, and we're going to talk more about role-playing games and how to make yours great.
And I assure you we are both fully clothed.
Well, you say that, but there's no possible way to know.
I have my brown sport coat on.
I'm clothed too.
Okay, good.
So since last time, what have you played?
So I was ill,
Oh no.
and I missed my Monday night game.
So ill you couldn't play D&D online?
So ill I could not play D&D online. Yeah,
that's unfortunate.
Just sneezy and achy with a wicked bad headache, and we haven't talked about types of players, but I tend to be kind of a method actor, and I didn't feel it was fair to my character to not be at my mental best. Then she wouldn't be at her mental best, and where I had kind of left her off, she's a bard, she's going to go perform in a speakeasy with a lot of dangerous people around, and I didn't want to do that to her. I didn't think that was fair.
Man, that is a level of respect for a fictional character that I don't think most people would give, but I like it.
I'm just weird like that.
No, that's when we do get to talking more about players and maybe more character stuff, I think it'll come up that there are people who get attached.
Yes. Yeah. So what did you play?
We played our game. Callie was away. She was in Florida visiting her gram, so we played our alternate campaign, which I think I have introduced on the show before. But one of the players in the game that I am DMing for offered to DM an alternate game for when we have people missing, and so we're doing that. And he has called it the Labyrinth of Versath, and Versath is a scumbag wizard who teleported various people from various realms to traverse through this labyrinth of his creation, followed by Wux, his gazer familiar, who acts as like a living video recorder streaming device for the wizard and his friends, while we are traipsing about this labyrinth of misery. And I am
so it's loosely based on the old 80s movie Running Man with Richard Dawson and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
I don't know.
You should check that movie out.
Okay.
Because it sounds like the gazer is kind of filming you. I'm doing air quotes, which you can't see, obviously. Filming you.
Yes.
As for this wizard's enjoyment, and that's kind of how that show. It was your standard 1980s. The world's going to devolve into blood sports, and
what was it called?
It was called The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Richard Dawson. That's your homework.
We'll see if it's on Netflix or Hulu. I might be able to.
Yeah, a lot of the Arnold Schwarzenegger stuff isn't. I had to buy the Conan DVDs.
Well, all right. So in that campaign, I am playing Osric Varnum, a human Oathbreaker paladin, and his we talked about it a little bit last week, but I'm playing an evil character. He's chaotic evil. He as a kid always wanted to be like a knight, and him and his childhood friends talked about it, and being a paladin was like being a super knight, so he went to go do that, and he was pretty good at it. And he was away from home, which is a small village a couple miles outside of the city where he trained. And 6 weeks that he was away from home, training, hasn't seen his family. He like swears in to the paladin order one morning, and then 2 days later, the order is bringing in his mother, father, and younger brother and sister, and is hanging them all publicly for being accomplices to witchcraft and dark magics, and smuggling evil things in and out of the city and spreading evil across the countryside. And Osric was told to like sit there and watch. So he has the haunted one background, and he is forever scarred by watching his family be hanged by the order who he had learned to love in a short period of time. So he busted out of the order, went back to home, um, packed a quick bag of whatever stuff his family had, and because he has the haunted one, he's got the monster hunter's pack. So he's got some interesting things, and he grabbed a vial of his mother's perfume, which is he wears around his neck, as a reminder that law and justice don't exist, and that the only things that are true are familial love, which he will never have again. So he has resolved to never love and to enact his justice, whatever that means, because the law failed him and he is above it. And so
Uh-huh.
nobody else in the campaign really likes him because he is cold and frustrated that he got teleported here against his will, and confused why nobody else doesn't want to get out as bad as he does. Um, so it's a very combat heavy campaign. We knew that from the beginning, which I don't have a problem with. But there's not a ton of room for character development, and I like to do lots of that with my characters. So
Mhm.
we'll see. We'll see how it goes. It is fun. It is fun. He just might not be the character that I should have made for something like that. But that's him.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah. We might have to. I know it's later on the list, but I might want to bump up um, episodes about alignment and evil characters, because I feel like that is, you are exceptionally good at that, and I could use a discussion on that.
I
And
tend to play mostly evil characters nowadays.
I know, but I'm doing it in a way where other characters and people are being like, "Oh, Ostric's an ass and a dick," and "Hey, Grouchy, what are you doing?" Like, nobody really buys into the fact that he was like betrayed and traumatized and has religiously devoted himself to
So,
not pursuing, like not following the law and being a
o-
good person anymore. So
okay, but here you're playing 5th edition,
right.
okay? And we'll definitely talk about this. This is a good segue to talk
Yeah,
about
yeah, go ahead.
some of the things about 5th edition, right? 5th edition is a very um I think the aperture is very wide open. I think it's a very broad type of game. And if you have a group of players who want to play 5e and do story and character development, you can do that. I think the game itself kind of pushes, even though it's very broad, I think everyone kind of falls into the funnel of um going to a challenge rated combat situation, rolling a bunch of dice, and then having some downtime.
So that is what this campaign is, because that like
That's
it's
what your DM has put together, right?
right, and it's his first time DMing. I like it's it is a good camp. We all knew it was going to be combat focused right from the beginning.
Sure.
But I think that character development is system agnostic. Like that's something that you can do no matter what. Even if you're just even like DCC dungeon crawling.
I think there are games where it is much more encouraged, and the mechanics and the structure of the game are better suited for that style of game. Like Blue Rose, for example,
Yes.
is a
Okay.
huge character development, relationship building. Let's sit around. Let's take tea with the party and our psychic animal friends and talk about what happened to us last week and a story from our childhood, and that what I'm saying.
Yeah.
um
And like 10 Candles is story and
it's
character driven. Like
Yep.
you make characters collectively as a group. So I know that there are systems that are um, geared towards that better, but I don't think that the system matters if you have a DM that wants to foster that.
and I agree with. If you're playing Paranoia and you want to have this one clone be different somehow, and the party is into that, and the um loyalty officer isn't going to rat you out the first chance she gets, then yeah, you can have that kind of game.
Right, right,
Until your loyalty officer decides she really wants that extra 5 experience points and she rats you all out and you get mulched.
right. And
Um,
to be fair, we've done 2 sessions of this alt game. Um, so there really hasn't there have been opportunities to do character development, and I think part of my character is sort of shutting those down. So like when we first arrived there, um, I was I didn't ask who anybody else was or really cared about the other people. I asked where to find my things and how to get out, and started going.
right.
So I don't, maybe I've just built the wrong character.
And
But I
that
think that
happens too.
doing that in 5e is uh, I don't think the system matters necessarily.
No, but I think it's easier to do that in some of these broader style games like
Sure.
5e or Pathfinder or even Starfinder, like where um, there's less rails, right? And
Yeah.
and that's so. Do you want to do the what is 5e for folks? We keep saying 5e,
We
5e,
do.
5e. So
Yeah, we should probably introduce it really
yep. So
quickly here before we keep going. Do you
so go
wanna?
ahead.
Okay.
I can start, and then you
Yeah.
can jump in because you're the 5e fan and I am not.
All right. Sure. So sure. You give
So
us the good. I'll give us the great.
so there's no bias there at all, is there? Um,
No.
so fifth edition, when people say 5e, they are talking about Dungeons and Dragons fifth edition. Um, the game Dungeons and Dragons has been around since 1974. It has undergone a number of revisions, not specifically linear. So you would think maybe there's 5 editions of Dungeons and Dragons, but there is one, two, three, four, five, 6.5, maybe. Um, it's kind of a diverse history. We're not gonna I'm gonna try to avoid talking about previous editions during this podcast. I'll stick with fifth edition, but fifth edition came out in 2014,
Yep. Yeah.
um, with the player's handbook, and that's how Dungeons and Dragons has been traditionally released. It's a 3-book set. The
For
player's handbook.
core books.
Right, the 3 core books is the
There's like
Player's
hundreds
Handbook,
of books now.
the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual. So those are if you have those 3 books, you can do anything and everything in the world of Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Now, like John was saying, there's hundreds of other books. We'll talk about that here in a minute, that expand your universe, but those are kind of the core 3. If you want to play the game, all you have to do is buy the Player's Handbook. If you want
No,
DM the game,
you don't.
Really?
Yeah, false. So before the player's handbook was published, they released a PDF for what are called the basic rules.
Ooh,
So you can look up you can do D&D 5th edition basic rules PDF. And that came out a couple months before the PHP. And if you are curious at all and don't want to spend a dime, this is free and published by Wizards of the Coast, and has a very, very, very basic introduction to like what is the game, what are the races, what are the classes, if you're going to make a character, how do you do that, and how do you kind of go about playing. And they don't have the tables for equipment and encounters and magic items, and I don't think there are any monster stat blocks in the basic rules. um, but lots of that stuff is also available from tons of different resources for free online as well.
right.
So if you really just want to like see what it's about and you don't know anything about it, the basic rules PDF is a fine place to start.
So Wizards of the Coast is, who are they?
The
Because you
company
mentioned,
that produces D&D.
okay, just
They are also the company that does Magic the Gathering.
yes,
So
and they're
you'll notice that there is some crossover between. Isn't it all the same universe? I don't do Magic, so I don't know.
so there is a book, a fifth edition source book for the world where Magic the Gathering takes place.
All right, because I've definitely seen stuff on Reddit where people are running campaigns like in Ravnica, and I'm
And
like,
that's the
I've
book.
heard of
That's
that.
I couldn't remember the book. It's Rav. That's the book. If you get the Ravnica book, you can run a fifth edition game in the world of Magic the Gathering.
Cool
Yep.
beans.
And Wizards of the Coast is a wholly owned subsidiary of Hasbro, the toy company.
Yeah. All right.
So
Cool.
just to fill in, just to because I'm
You're a history
I
nerd. We know.
no, and but I also get this in other places where I do talks and stuff. I'll throw out a company name, and it's like, yeah, Fantasy Flight. Everybody knows Fantasy Flight, and
Not
not
everybody
everybody knows
does.
that Fantasy Flight makes board games because apparently not everybody plays awesome board games. They
No,
will
but
once
that's
they
okay.
learn about Fantasy Flight. They'll start playing board games. But anyway,
We'll get
so
there.
that's why I just wanted to call those out. Like, what's this and what's that and that. So if I keep doing that to you and I get super annoying, John, just yell at me
Okay, can do.
because like you normally you'd wave at me on the camera and we can't do that today.
No,
So
that's okay. Um,
so
I know.
that's
Yeah, that's 5e.
yep.
It's super popular. If you are listening to this, there's a high chance that you have heard of it before and or maybe are playing it. Um, some of this stuff might be a little basic, maybe not. It's all available if you are Google savvy, but this sort of outline of 5e deep dive is going to serve as a template for future systems, and I think the the more we go from popular and common to lesser known and more uncommon systems, maybe more niche systems, then
Exotic systems.
exotic. Then we'll be able to use this template and introduce those games to more people, hopefully. So we're going to cover genre, the primary die mechanic, the canon for the game, the appeal for the game, and other support and extras and bonus stuff. So D&D 5th edition, what genre would you say it is?
So I'm gonna have to go high fantasy.
Well, okay.
And mean, and
Start
that's
the discussion off with a disagreement, why don't you?
okay. Go ahead. So, what do you think it is?
I would say it ranges from high to low fantasy. I think that depending on your DM and your setting and where you are playing and sort of what is allowed and what the world is like, you could have a low setting where maybe the wizard in your party is the only magic user in the world, or you could have a high magic setting like many are and have wizards and flying carpets and dragons and dungeons.
and snotty highfalutin elves.
Sure. So I think it can be run as any sort of fantasy.
Yeah, I think historically though it trends more towards the high fantasy.
Yeah, yes.
So if you
But
look
yeah,
at the
5e definitely
modules,
does.
if you look at the modules and the background material and some of the bigger adventure paths and even the different options for players, you're going to see lots of high fantasy tropes.
Yeah, I mean yes. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm also thinking of like, oh, well, older editions of 5e were closer to Tolkien inspired stuff, so that's like mid fantasy at the best. But we're not talking about other systems. We're talking about
No, we're
5e.
talking about five. Yeah,
I
you're
was
doing the
the
same.
first one who did it.
You did it. I was worried I was going to do it all
I
night,
know.
and but that's okay. So yeah, I think yes, absolutely. You can run pretty much any kind of game. That's one of the, we talked about. I talked about this being a broad system.
Hmm.
Um, there are rules for the gunslinger class. So if you wanted to have black powder and magic, you could run a, you know, fantasy Renaissance or colonial style game with 5e rules. So I think by default, it's for me, it's high fantasy, unless you're doing some home brewing or some of your own world construction using the mechanics. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Yes, I understand what you are saying.
Where if you play DCC Lankmar, that is a low fantasy
Hmm.
out the gate. Like there is every magician is bad potentially. Even player character magicians are going to get corruption and wind up being bad guys eventually. Trying to think of other low fantasy. All the high fantasy games are popping into my head and
Right. Well, like the One Ring would be low fantasy, right? Low mid, maybe.
no, yeah, because there aren't a lot of wizards,
Right.
right?
Um, I mean, most
But
of DCC is low. There's not really like there are wizards even
there are
outside of
wizards,
Blankmar.
and there are well, so regular DCC there are wizards and clerics and magic and spells, but
Yeah, but
it's more low.
I would
Yeah,
still call that lower mid.
yeah.
Um, you mentioned the gunslinger, and I'm jumping the gun. But when we get to
Jumping the gun.
I didn't even try.
Yeah.
Um, when we get down to talking about what is and isn't canon, we'll circle back to gunslinger. I'm gonna make a
Okay.
note of that. Um, so primary die system or primary die mechanic for 5e is the D20. It's your 20-sided die. Um, I don't,
Yep.
yeah, I don't want to list like all of the things, but that is your attack rolls, your spell casting, your skill checks, your saving throws.
And it's
Um,
mostly a roll meet or beat system, right? So
yes,
if your armor class is 12 and I'm going to poke you with the pointy end of my sword, I roll my d20 and I'm hoping for a 12 or better,
right.
right? So it's a roll over some kind of number and then whatever the modifiers are, right? So you kicked sand in my eyes, it's a -3 because I can't see, but I cast Fairy Fire on you, so it's a +2. -3 +2, it's a -1. Roll the dice and see where they land, kind of thing.
Yeah. So yeah. It's
You, you
higher or equal
use
to for attack rolls, saving throws, ability checks. If it's an ability contest and you tie, then it remains a tie for the sake of the contest, and so
right,
it's typically meet or beat. Um,
and then there are the D4, the D6, the D8, the D10, the D12.
it's your
Those are
standard 7 die set.
yeah, it's your standard 7 die set. You're going to use those other dice for character creation. In a lot of times, weapon damage will be one of the other dies, but the D20 is the one you're reaching for probably the most
At,
when
at
you're
least
doing.
half the time.
Yeah, yeah.
definitely more, because if it's half the time and you're have to roll it every time you attack, then
Right.
yeah.
So you roll for initiative, that's a d20. You roll to attack, that's a d20. Then you roll your d8 for damage. Then you roll a d20
Then
for
they get a reaction
yeah,
that is a dex save, so you're rolling the dex save, and yeah,
which
yep.
is a
No, you definitely
d20.
use it more.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, it's a D. When we say D20 system, there's actually something called the D20 system. It was very popular in the late '90s, early 2000s. Um,
Hmm.
it's a generic role play system. But and so this is not that. It's not the pure D20 classical system, but it uses the fifth edition 20-sided die. Um, where other games would use, there's a bunch of other mechanics. We haven't talked about mechanics, but um,
No, because if people want to get into crunchier stuff, then the best way to do that is really to read the book. And then if you have questions, please tweet at us or email us. But
well, we could easily do a math show and talk about probabilities and dice rolling mechanics and
maybe like
chances of
much farther down the
success.
road.
Yeah,
But
when we want to bore the snot out of people, right?
when we're really out of ideas,
Then you'll let me teach a math
we'll,
class.
we'll do the math episode.
Okay, we'll do the math episode. We'll have Uncle Matt as a guest.
That would be fantastic. That would be real. Actually, I just spent a little while discouraging that, but that would actually be pretty good.
Oh yeah, now you
Um,
think it's a good idea.
yeah, I don't know. I'm excited for guests. So
Okay. Well, so that's I sold that with a guess, but it's
yeah.
it's math.
All right.
It's really probability. But go ahead, keep going.
Yep. Canon for fifth edition
Oh,
consists of your
so
core rule books. So like we were talking about, the player handbook, monster manual, dungeon master's guide, and
and the
that's
setting is Faerun. Do I want to make that bold statement?
yeah, more or less. I think like the canonical setting for 5e is the forgot right. It's the Forgotten Realms, right? Faerun is
Forgotten
in
Realms.
the Forgotten
Yes.
Realms.
Yeah.
No.
So that's the land,
Yeah.
the continent of Faerun, where you'll find all of the popular Dungeons and Dragons places like Baldur's Gate and Waterdeep
And Neverwinter.
and Neverwinter and Menzoberranzan, my favorite city, um, and Chednazad. Although Chednazad is destroyed depending on your timeline, right? That's in the R.A.
Miss,
Salvatore books.
Mr. Drow
Chednazad
Lover.
Falls. That's right.
Yeah,
Um,
you got all of the Sword Coast, all of your sort of
10 towns.
canonical.
Yeah.
Um,
Luskin. I keep wanting to say Lankmar, but it was Luskin was the town I was looking for. And Gauntlgrim and Mithril Hall, and so,
yeah,
and then
all
that,
your
then
cool places.
yep, and that's kind of from the Bob Salvatore books. And then if you go south, right,
So if
there's a
sorry, no, if you're looking for books, either like to read to get uh I don't know, it's like reading a D&D story. But the author's name on the books is R.A. Salvatore. So I didn't want people to get confused if they're looking for it.
yeah. So R.A. Salvatore is the author. Also, Ed Greenwood is another Forgotten Realms author.
Oh.
Um, really, if you Google the Forgotten Realms, it's going to take you to Wizards of the Coast is the first hit. There's a whole Land of Faerun set of web pages. There's beautiful artwork to talk about
Oh yeah.
the places. There's atlases that you can get. There's maps if you love maps for Faerun. But so as far as the canon for the world, the geography is all kind of laid out for you, which is very nice. And then you can find authors who have written. Oh, Lisa Smedman. Put Lisa Smedman on there
Oh
too.
yeah, yep.
She's a fabulous author. More Drow, right?
Hmm.
Books, but she's fantastic.
So outside of just sort of the core canon, there is also Wizards of the Coast sponsored, approved, published content from, I don't know if they're partners or employees or what, but stuff like Curse of Strahd,
Yeah,
where it's written by it's Weiss and Hickman. Is it no, Nancy Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman.
right.
Who
And
do
so
lots of
so
fantasy writing
they
for
do,
lots of different canons.
and Weiss and Hickman introduced they wrote Ravenloft, if my memory serves me correctly. Um,
Yes.
and
And
Ravenloft was the inspiration for the Curse of Strahd. Ravenloft was a few editions of D&D ago. It was a module, and then the Curse of Strahd. They basically took that module and flushed it out into an entire um, realm. Right? I'll use an MMO term here.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so
Barovia is
it's a
its own.
Barovia is its own zone with several places to go hang out and do things. Um,
There's not many places to hang out, but yeah. Not the kind of place that you go to just hang out.
I don't know. Our party spent almost a month goofing around in the town.
Well, maybe
Our
you
DM
go
was
there to hang out.
super frustrated with the level of putzing. Um, but my dwarf cleric had to find a good place to drink, and we tried every tavern in town, and he couldn't find a good place to get beer. And then there was a toy maker who we befriended. It was the DM's nightmare where, and you've seen these memes. If you haven't seen these memes, look, Google them. Right, you have this
Yep.
beautiful plot line over here, and all the characters are talking to the cardboard cutout NPC over there, and like 3 sessions of shopping and chatting and carousing in the bars, and our DM was like,
Somebody ate the pie that was on the baker's windowsill. We've got to figure all of that
we're
out
gonna
before we go
we're gonna
slay this
help that
dragon.
poor baker,
Like,
right? There's
yeah.
a vampire who wants you dead. Yeah, he can wait. This baker's daughter, she's got my attention right now. It's like DM's like, she doesn't even have a name. Can you guys just like, she says thanks but no thanks, leave her alone.
Yeah.
That dwarf pinched me. Guards, arrest this dwarf. And oh, now we got to spend the next session in jail because I've been, falsely accused of sexual harassment.
Man,
Yeah.
gotta love
That's
those sessions.
those sessions, they can be lots of fun, and sometimes as a DM they can be a little frustrating.
Yeah, but as long as everyone's having fun, and when we say everyone, that mean like DM included, you should be
Right.
having fun running the game. But it's maybe it's just me. It's certainly not. Maybe it is less common than I think for a DM to be able to just sit there while the players are having some conversation about something in the world and just enjoy the hell out of it. Because I love that stuff, and I have an entirely homebrew world, so maybe it's different. Um, if you are using supplemental content,
Yeah,
but
no, I think it's
like players sitting around being like, "Oh no, this god is about this, and we've talked to these people and they know these things from this town," and we like just having them care that much is very cool. And if they're having fun, then I am happy. I am what's the happy as a clam.
there you go. All right, so we talked about Forgotten Realms and Faerun
Yep.
and some of the other. We didn't get down to Chult and the
Oh
Tomb
sure.
of Annihilation, right? But
Yep.
that's
Wildly popular.
wildly popular. There's a desert biome, if you will, and that's Kalimshan,
Yep. Kalimshan.
Kalimshan, home of Artemis and Trary, um, and the halfling Regis. I'm not gonna, no spoilers, right, for
Yeah.
Bob
Yeah.
Salvatore's book. So, but yeah, so there's a whole atlas, there's a whole map, there's several books, and yeah, reading Ed Greenwood or Lisa Smedman or Ari Salvatore um, is just like kind of eavesdropping on a D&D adventure where
Totally.
you can see inside the players' heads, right? Because you get with Ari Salvatore, you get to hear what Driss Jordan is thinking. Lisa Smedman, not so much. She doesn't do a lot of introspection. It's more action oriented and intrigue. Of course, it's a story about drow, so you kind of expect that.
Right.
Uh, but then Curse of Strahd, again, that's part of that. And then um, I see you've got more rule books listed under canon in the show notes, like Xanthar's Guide to Everything.
Yeah, or Volo's Guide to Monsters, like any of those, like anything published by Wizards of the Coast, I think is pretty widely accepted as canon.
As canon, right?
Um,
And
like a
so
lot of that
here's
works its way into Adventure League play, and
yep. But the beauty of 5e is that you don't have to, like, if you're a DM and you don't want to deal with samurai, you just want to take that off the table. I think my DM is probably wishing he had taken the College of Whispers Bard off the table, because I'm just using it to terrify the crap out of all of his NPCs. You could just, as a DM, say, nope, Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide. That's what's available for you player characters.
so
Uh,
that's what my friend did for the alt game that we're playing. There is no homebrew. Well, he homebrews a little bit of stuff. He's not a homebrew Nazi about it. Um, but there's no Unearthed Arcana like playtest stuff for 5e. Oh, we should talk about that a little bit more too.
all right.
Actually, while we're right here, um,
So
the
what's Unearthed Arcana, John?
Unearthed Arcana is the term for unreleased or to be officially released playtest content from Wizards of the Coast. Um, just last week, they published 3 new subclasses for what was it? Artificer, Druid, and Ranger. Um, yeah, so the armor for the Artificer, Circle of Stars for the Druid, and Fey Wanderer for the Ranger.
Ooh.
And so these are uh, unofficially released. I'm pretty sure they label it playtest quality or playtestable content. Um, and that's like subclasses part 3 with Armor, Circle of Stars, Druid, and Fey Wanderer Ranger is written by um, like the top 5 names on most of the D&D books. So
Okay.
yeah, it's Ben Patricior, Jeremy Crawford, Adam Lee, Dan Dillon, and F. Wesley Schneider. But everybody knows who Jeremy Crawford is, so um, that's Unearthed Arcana. So my DM said, we're gonna stick to base races, base classes, um, PHB, like not homebrew official classes like the Gunslinger. Um,
Or the Dampier.
right. So that yes, you can run a game like that and have it be okay. Um, Canon. While we're talking, I just mentioned Gunslinger again, and I wanted to circle back to this
Yes.
earlier. Is that there's also quite a bit of content by Matt Mercer from Critical Role, who people who play 5e knows who is, and stuff like the Gunslinger. I don't know if it's I'm fairly sure. I don't know if sponsored is the right word, um, or if it is published or purchased or what have you by Wizards from Matt, but uh, Gunslinger and Blood Hunter and some of the other stuff that he has homebrewed has been pretty accepted by the 5e community as being relatively canon. Maybe not canon, but certainly like pretty widely approved in most games.
Right.
So like there's definitely well-known community. I see a lot of stuff from Matt Colville, but I haven't explored who he is very much, and that's probably like a 5e sin or something saying that out loud, but
Yeah.
I don't watch a lot of YouTube, so um so that's sort of the canon of the game. There are definitely resources out there to learn more to help you immerse yourself in the world. I've got sitting over in my pile of books the Forgotten Realms campaign setting guide. Um, Pretty sure I got that at the Bookery that year that we were out in Ohio.
Probably.
And that is like a full. That's the the real deep dive into the Forgotten Realms. So there's definitely resources out there if you want to play around in the world that they have made.
After you read that, I'll loan you my omnibus of Glorantha, and you can see how they stack up.
Is that not the PDF that you sent me? Pretty sure I
Maybe.
have. Pretty sure I have that.
Yeah, but you need to experience the
I want to read
for
the Fafford and the Grey Mouser books because
well,
you talk about those a lot.
I should just Amazon those to you anyway.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. There's got to be some kind of holiday coming up.
Some kind of Easter.
Easter, yeah. Easter, everybody gets Appendix N fantasy novels from Dad.
Nice. There's it's kind of unrelated, but I want to read all of those books.
They're really, really good.
That's on my list of things to do, and I think it will make me a better DM.
So yeah, we'll talk about that. We can talk about that off. That's going to drag us away from 5e
All right. Yep. You're
because
right.
so let's focus and we'll move on to the appeal. What 5e should appeal to what kind of people?
Everybody. That's the cop out answer. But honestly, everybody. It is. Oh,
So I kind of I'm trending in that direction. I think the appeal of the game is that there are plenty of choices. And this there might be there, we might be getting to the point now where there are almost it's like Pathfinder um first edition
not quite.
where there are 30 classes and 26 playable races and right you it's like okay I'm going to be a half vampire half drow uh thief magician right so I'm going down a rabbit hole here but I think the big appeal for fifth edition is that if I have this idea of a fantasy trope in my head, right? I put together a dwarven pirate gunslinger. And there were rules, right? I had to go to the homebrew for the gunslinger, but there were rules to put that together,
Yeah.
right? I wanted to do a um, arcane thief bounty hunter, and I put that together, and that
Sure.
was so you can play everything from the vanilla, right? I am a human sword and board fighter. I'm a halfling thief with dual wielding daggers, right? Your normal, just kind of vanilla
Yeah.
adventure
All of your high fantasy tropey
tropes,
sort of
right?
stuff. Yeah.
But then you can sway it, right? And you can play a dwarven gunslinger or a tiefling which is a half devil half human right um well most of those guys wind up being
A tiefling
sorcerers
paladin.
or tiefling paladin right so it gives you a wide range of things to play. I think the appeal is, and where you don't get into the tyranny of choice, is that there are sets of rules. So I want to be a tiefling. Okay, I open up the player's handbook, and here's all the stuff I need to know about a tiefling. And then I want to be a paladin. So then I flip to the paladin section. Here's all the stuff I need to be a paladin. So I just put those two things together, and then I have a workable character.
Yeah.
So I think
It's part. You're talking about like ease of access, right? Like it's
yes,
easy. 5e is a relatively easy um, system to learn. So like if you honestly you can read just the basic rules PDF and play or run a game. It's not you're not going to know the depths of everything and necessarily have a lot of context for what everything means, but if you are intelligent, you can figure that out and run a game from that. Um, it yeah, it's I don't want to say it's lightweight because there are lots of skills, and there are sometimes particularly at later levels where you'll be adding lots of things from different sources. You might
That
have things to, there's not a ton of stuff to keep track of, but
Well, it depends on, so that's I think another appealing thing about 5e, or one thing that will appeal to people, is that if you want to run a basic sword and board fighter and you don't want to mess around with how many spell slots do I have, and have I prayed within 12 hours, and do I have bardic inspiration, if you don't want to, you can just play that class, right?
right. I mean, as with any like
And if you
deep,
wanted a more complicated scenario, you could multi-class, and we haven't talked about multi-classing in any of the podcasts yet, but one of the things about 5e is that it has this framework for, yep, I started out in life as a cleric, uh in devotion to, I'll go back to my dwarven roots, right, Moradin, and I spent all this time getting to level 5, and now I've decided that I want to be a druid, right? I'm going to serve Moradin by growing better hops to make better beer, and to do that I need to study with this lady I found in the woods. And now that character is going to be more complicated to play because they have dwarven spells, or elven cleric spells, dwarven traits, and now they're working on a druid build.
right. So they'll have
Uh,
druid spells and
yeah, but
druid
again,
proficiencies and
the the book has all of that laid out for you, so you're not building it from scratch.
right, right. Um, I so I it's I'm gonna go back to my Oathbreaker Paladin Osric again. We are currently level 2. We'll probably hit level 3 next session, when we get to play the alt game. Um, but I don't know when I'm gonna do it. I still have to plan that out. I might do a 3-in-1 split for when I start. But he's an Oathbreaker Paladin because, per his backstory, which I talked about earlier, after his family being killed and him leaving, he sort of swore away. Like 2 days prior to all of that, he had sworn all of his paladin oaths. Like, I will protect the king, I will protect the king's land, I'll protect the king's people. And he's like, no, screw that. The king killed my family. And so he has broken every oath. So he's gonna go Oathbreaker Paladin. But then I think also because of, um, like the shock that is resonating through him, I'm gonna do a level of Barbarian, and eventually, if I take enough, then I'll go, Path of the Ancestral Guardian, where the first feature of that is that spectral ancestral warriors appear when you rage, and my spectral ancestral warriors are going to be my dead family, and it's going to be very like Harry Potter from that one scene in the is it the sixth movie or is it the first part of the seventh, where he goes to die and his family's all there.
Oh, you don't mean, you, instead of at the Goblet of Fire,
Oh
when all of
yes.
his dead family jumps on Voldemort, distracts?
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be like that,
Ah,
except they're not going to be jumping on Voldemort. It's going to be Osric pumping a sword through his gullet. Um,
nice.
yeah, sorry, I sidetracked again. I am
You,
really interested in that character right now,
yeah,
apparently.
I don't know why. Well, I know why, because it's one of the, you get, I get the same thing. I get interested in the character, and that I just can't get him out of my head.
Yeah.
So, have we talked about what appeals to people?
Yeah, a little bit. It's easy to learn. If you have a high fantasy image or character sort of built out in your head. You did a Lord of the Rings movie marathon with your friends, and you haven't heard of the One Ring, but you've heard of 5e because you watched Stranger Things, and now you're gonna go try to play a game where you're a dwarf and a human and an elf. Um, it's accessible. It's very iconic and it's popular. Um, those are some appeals. Like what comes with being popular is also that there's lots of resources for it. If you don't have the time or the creative energy or the interest in building a world, the Forgotten Realms is an entirely built and fleshed out, beautiful setting to play in. Um, and with all
Well,
of the other
parts of it
supplements,
are beautiful,
yeah,
and
yes.
parts of it are above ground.
Nice. The dwarf and drow bias really shining through.
It
Or,
is.
well, it's not because it can't reach underground.
Well,
But
it, but all right. So moving down into support when we
yeah,
talk
yeah.
or do you
So,
want to keep going to
well, I
appeal?
was gonna segue there.
Okay, go ahead.
Forgotten Realms are fantastic, and there are other resources like Salt Marsh or Sword Coast's Guide or Curse of Strahd if you want a different setting. But all of those different settings and all of the people who are playing it lend to a broad and effective support network. And that's my segue into support. Um,
So when I think about support, I start thinking third party vendors.
okay,
Okay.
sure.
So adventureaweek.com.
Yep.
They have and you've got drive through RPG up there as well. But there is also um, Cubicle 7. Sorry, I couldn't think of the company. Has the Middle Earth
Oh, right. You mentioned
for
this.
5e.
Yep.
So it's basically source books, or so I'm not going to say splat books, but source books for uh, playing in Middle Earth. So all the Tolkien stuff. Um, there are Goodman Games has the 5e
Oh
revivals
yeah.
of all the really old. So Keep on the Borderlands, um, Isle of Dread, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. We talked about some of these during the module show,
Lots of
but
them.
you can get they're expensive. They're $50 a whack, but they're hardcover. You get the original AD&D module, and then you get a refreshed fifth edition version of the module, um, which is really a lot of fun. But there is, if you learn the 5e mechanics, you can then take that knowledge of the mechanics and how to, what dice to roll, and what are feats and what are attributes and skills and how those function, and
Hmm.
take that knowledge to many other genres, even non-fantasy genres. But
Yeah, yeah.
we'll
Various
focus on the
genres
fantasy
and
stuff.
settings.
Yeah. Yeah.
So while you're talking about third-party stuff, I'm gonna plug our unofficial sponsor, Red Hoodie Games. You can go on over to Red Hoodie Games, the number 5.wordpress.com for bi-weekly content to be used in your home tabletop games. So we do this show every other week, and in the in-between weeks, I write a piece for Red Hoodie, and that could be anything from a character concept to 1d12 situations that your players might find themselves in if they stay out late in the city streets, um, to well, I don't even want to limit it because it might eventually be everything. Um, Last week, following the episode of Set the Table 5 on world building and homebrew, per a Patreon request, I did a Game Master musing on world building. So if last episode didn't scratch your world building itch quite enough, head on over to redhoodiegames5.wordpress.com and check out the latest blog post, which will give you another dose of world building commentary, suggestions, um, and how to make your game, how to take it from good to great. So that's our little mid-show plug. Back to support for 5e.
So we talked about third-party stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are also more Wizards of the Coast content. So while the game is easy to play, sometimes it's easy to be overwhelmed. Like, again, when you get to those higher levels, and I've got many spells that I could cast, and I'm not sure which ones I have. Like, I'm fairly good about checking stuff off. Okay, I've used a spell slot. Sometimes players they fudge a little bit, and you've only got 3 for one first level spell slots.
Right. How many sorcerer points have you used since your
Yeah.
last long rest? Like,
I don't think I've used any. I haven't marked any off on my paper. It's
no,
like, you just cast magic missile twice, you bastard.
You used 3 for that twin spell. You used 6 for that other thing. Like, you gotta have like 3 to 5 left.
So, they do make decks of cards. So if you're playing a cleric, you can go to your friendly local game store and buy the cleric spell deck, and it's a deck of all the spell cards that a cleric can cast. So then you can have so if you're a kinesthetic person, if you need to have something in your hand to remind you of things, you can have those decks of cards. And they have them for all of the various classes. And it's especially helpful if you're playing a class that you don't normally play, right?
Totally.
In one of our games, our person who was typecast as the rogue for many, many, many characters decided to branch out and be a ranger, and they played their ranger like a rogue.
I mean,
So
you can play rangers like rogues.
you can, but if you're range DPS, and I don't play a ranger, so
Yeah.
this is not, I'm not criticizing how another player played their character. Okay, so that's not what's happening here. I'm not upset with this person. I love playing with them, and that's not what this is about. This is why these cards are useful. Is that had this person had those cards in their hand, then they would have said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to put down Hunter's Mark, and now I'm going to put down this, and now and it would have been a kinesthetic kind of, here are the things I can do, versus I've got this sheet in front of me with a ton of check marks and numbers, and I know what the rogue sheet looks like, and I know how to,
how to
roll
do
for
it.
stealth, sneak, backstab, triple damage, poison, yada yada yada."
Yeah.
But in playing that new class, these cards can really help you remember that you have these abilities and when to use them, and if you've used them or not, kind of thing. So
it's also like, I don't know, like pretty and collectible stuff. It's like dice, right? Once you start buying stuff for tabletop role playing games, you're boned.
yeah, it never stops. Never stops. But spell card decks, miniatures. So they're Wizards of the Coast and other miniature. I mean, we could probably have a whole show on miniatures. But
Sure.
there are miniatures that you can get, each class, each race and class combination that makes sense. There's a miniature for. I don't know if there is a dwarf druid. There probably is. I'm gonna have to Google and look for dwarf druid.
Yeah, no, go ahead, do that, because I am curious, and I'm looking for something as well that I will share after we get the results of yours.
Yep.
Yep, you found it.
Yep. Oh,
Okay.
cleric. So I found cleric. Yep. Stonehaven dwarf druid miniature, for 28mm tabletop.
Nice.
Yep. $12. It's a lady. She's wearing deer antler armors. She's barefoot. She's got a big stick. Yep.
So
Oh, it's a male. I'm sorry, it's a male druid. Oh no, there's a lady with a fox too. So there's a female with a fox, and there's a male with a big shillelagh.
Nice. So while you were looking for that, I was curious because I know I notice I'm subscribed to a whole bunch of subreddits, but I notice that there is quite a bit of overlap between D&D and fantasy role playing stuff and 3D printing. So I
Okay.
hopped over to Thingiverse, which is a popular site for getting models for 3D printing, and there is a dwarf druid miniature on there as well. You can oh, go ahead.
So the thing I was gonna say is, if you can't find one, you can go to Hero Forge and make one.
Yeah. Yep. Hero 4. That's what that was my next thing.
Yep.
Which is a it's I don't know. Hero Forge is also fun to play around with if you are like not sure what you want your character to look like, but you want to play around with it. Hero Forge is just fun.
Yes.
That's it's so easy to just waste time on Hero Forge. It's not a waste, but man, oh man,
No, it's not a waste, but yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of Hero Forge miniatures all queued up,
ready to go for when I
ready.
eventually
It's like
get my 3D printer.
if I ever play
If I ever play a Naga Paladin.
all right, if I ever play a Vargur Spacer, Vargurs are the dog people in Traveler,
Okay, yeah, you lost me there.
or the Aslanteans. The Aslanteans are the lion-faced people in Traveler, and
I
they
wonder where they got that from.
I don't know. Okay, so that was our support, right? Tons of stuff, dice.
Oh,
Um,
before we move on, I
yes.
think that this would be support as well. But we mentioned lots of books for the canon, but I think that there are. I would call other fantasy books support for a fantasy role play game where, and maybe not, but like other fantasy media, right? So other books
Yeah.
like the Dragonlance series, also by Weiss and Hickman, um, or the Lord of the Rings movies, or uh,
The old Dragon Slayer movie, the Dragon Heart movie with Sean Connery as the voice of the dragon.
yeah,
Beastmaster, the old. Was just watching the Conan Arnold Schwarzenegger Conan movies. I got those on Blu-ray the other
sure.
day. Uh,
Maybe like and not even necessarily just fantasy stuff. Aragon, it's a good series for some inspiration.
yeah.
But even like Harry Potter or Star Trek, like just getting ideas for tabletop role playing games.
Yep. And you can
It's
always you can take a plot from a movie, like, I'll pick one of my favorite movies, Casablanca.
oh
Okay.
man, you
And what do you mean I suck?
no. Sorry, I didn't say you suck. You started to say Casa. You had said, I don't know a movie, and I had thought of one, and you had said Ka, and I thought for a second maybe we were going in the same direction, and you said Casablanca, and I was gonna say Harold and Kumar go to White Castle.
No, yeah.
Like that would
So
make a hilarious D&D movie or
that would make
D&D session.
a 50 campaign. Yeah, but I mean, either one, right? Harold and Kumar go to White Castle, or uh, right, the party is in a bar and their lost love walks in with the new husband, or you are the lost love who walks in with your new husband, or you're the husband and now you have a party and one of the party members has this weird connection with the bartender that you don't know about, and there's all sorts of stuff going on. You
Totally.
don't have to use, I mean, that would be it's a fabulous story, and then you can use that plot and put it into a fantasy setting.
Right, like people always say like, "Oh, don't fix what isn't broke." I shouldn't have even. I don't like that saying. I shouldn't have even brought it up, but I did. People say like, "Don't fix it if it isn't broken." But if that happened, then we wouldn't be on the fourth coming on the fifth PlayStation. Like,
Right.
um,
We
but
wouldn't be on 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons.
right. Like, AD&D wasn't broken. Like,
Eh,
5 was nope. All right.
No, 3. So and we're gonna get down to this pretty soon when we start to talk about what we don't love, because right, I'm the where
The
you have a bias against
non-believer.
Paizo.
Shun the non-believer.
I'm
Shun.
Yes, shun me because I am the
Shun.
non-believer. I play 5e almost every week, and it's a good system, but it's not a great system.
We
So
already covered that distinction at the beginning. I was
we
going
did
to talk about the great things.
right.
Because
You can
I
talk
think
about
it
the great things.
is.
So that's what I see. What's coming up next, right? Is the what do you love? So what do you love about 5e?
So part of it is the popularity, the willingness to learn, the willingness to play. As a DM, because I think that is most of the lens that we have talked about thus far on the show. Like all of this is within the context of being a DM at the table, not
Sure.
necessarily being a player. Um, so so as a DM, it is, and I see these questions online a lot, like how do I get my players to role play more, like how do I get them to be more engaged with the game. And I think with something like 5e, you don't have to try all that hard to get your players engaged with the game. Like, people kind of know what it is. Most people have heard of Dungeons and Dragons at some point, and if you are looking to play and you look up like, oh, what should I buy, everyone's going to point you towards 5th edition because that's the latest and greatest. um, and
It's the most popular.
yes, yeah, so if you sit down to a table to play D&D 5e with everyone, there is an energy about that is like, oh, we all know what we're getting ourselves into and this is great. The first time that I played 10 Candles was last Thanksgiving, and we sat down at the table, and I had skimmed the rule book, and the GM for that had read it, and then 2 other players at the table out of 7, I think we had 7 or 8, doesn't matter. Um, Maybe less than half of the table had read the book, and the other half were sort of newer or beginner level tabletop RPGers. So it wasn't the same. You sit down and everybody knows what they're getting themselves into. It's you sit down and people kind of have questions and are uncertain, and the energy is just different, right? So because 5e is so popular, it's really easy to have players who are energetic and interested in what is about to happen. Um, that's that's probably like the first thing as a DM that you notice playing 5e with people. When you start to realize like, hey, this is really good, um, it's that everyone at the table is like, hey, this is going to be really good. Uh, so that's one thing.
Okay.
Um, Mechanically, I don't want to dig too deep into the mechanics of it, but I'm a big fan of some of the additions to 5e, like advantage and disadvantage. So we talked about it earlier, where most of your rolls are with a 20-sided die, a d20. So if you are a rogue going to attack a troll, and you are gonna run at the troll from the front and do an attack, that's fine. But if you are the rogue who sneaks around and you're sitting in a bush in the jungle, and when the troll walks by, you're gonna lash out and surprise him and stab him in the back, you gain advantage for that situation. So if you'd roll a d20, uh, with advantage, you roll 2 d20s and you take the higher of the 2 results. So you get a 3 and an 11, you take the 11. Um, Disadvantage is basically the opposite of that, where you are trying to climb a rope. You are crossing a rope bridge over a deep gorge, and the rope bridge snapped, and you have fallen, and the rope bridge didn't snap, it was cut from the other side, and so you've fallen down quite a ways, but you managed to hold on, and you're going to try to climb up the rope. It would be an athletics check, and just as you start to climb, it begins to rain and thunder and storm, and there's wind blowing and the rope is wet, so you're gonna make that athletics check with disadvantage. Um, and so I think it is a cool way to make situations easier or more difficult without being as arbitrary about it as you have had to be in the past. So, like in 3.5, you could assign little bonuses and modifiers to things, right? So, you got some. I didn't ever play a rogue in 3.5, so I don't know what the sneak attack bonus was. But you would get a bonus to hit if you were hidden, which is basically what advantage is, except that bonus to hit for rogues it was consistent, I'm pretty sure. But as the DM, if somebody's climbing that rope bridge in a storm after it has snapped, you have to impose in 3.5 you'd have to impose some sort of negative modifier to that, right? So you could just increase the DC in your mind, or you could say like, oh, you have, leave the DC normal and tell the player like, oh, you got a -4 on this. But then next time when the weather is bad and you're trying to use grappling hooks to climb ropes to get into a keep, now it's only a -3. So it's harder to keep track of those bonuses.
Okay.
And so I think advantage and disadvantage gives the DM a little bit more of a fair tool for dealing with those things, and makes it easier for the players to understand like, oh, this is good, or this is easy, or I'm good at this, or the situation lends itself to success here,
Or
or
this is challenging and more difficult than it normally would be.
exactly, yeah. And
Okay.
I think advantage disadvantage is it's a clear and fair indicator to the players about how things are going, and it's something that they can ask for that doesn't feel sketchy. So like if
Hmm.
you were going to ask, hey, can I get a +2 on this, can I get a +5 on this, it's like, hey, do I have advantage because the barkeep likes me and I'm fighting somebody in her tavern and the guards come, can she back me up? Yeah, totally. Like,
Yep.
um so
No, I get
yes,
that.
advantage disadvantage is a really great tool for the DM. I like the inspiration mechanic, which is a sort of optional mechanic that you can play a couple different ways. I think the rules as written inspiration is when a player at your table does something that enhances the immersion or the situation or the role play of the game, the DM can grant them inspiration, and they would be able to roll anything that they any any check, or anytime they roll a d20 basically, um, they could, after rolling it, choose to gain advantage on that check using their inspiration. um, I'm
Now, is
list
that different than bardic inspiration?
Yes. Yes. And so bardic inspiration, the bard sings a song or paints them a picture or whatever the bardic art is. It's usually music, but
Tells a joke.
sure, yeah, a comedy bard. That's a good idea. Um, bardic inspiration is they get a die that they can use on an attack roll, saving throw, or ability check, that powers up as the bard powers up. So a level 1 bard has a d6 inspiration die. So if they inspire your ranger can gain a d6 plus their d20 to hit that faraway goblin.
And I sucked you into talking about rules mechanics, didn't I?
Yeah, that's okay. I'm not gonna linger on it very much.
Okay.
I'm listening to Roll20 now, which I've mentioned before, and the way Matt Mercer does inspiration is he gives a d6, um, and that player can add a d6 to a roll. So I think that that's something that I'm going to integrate. I'm going to try to do inspiration differently, um, and maybe do a combination of those two, because my players never. I don't know if it's that they don't remember that they have it or they just choose not to use it. Maybe I'm not giving them enough dire situations where they feel they need it. But I think half of my group has DM's inspiration for one thing or another. And things that you can give DM inspiration out. I have two examples that shine so bright in my imagination. Um, uh, One is when Katrana, Callie's half-elf druid, they were on a boat.
We're on a boat.
She had oh man, I don't know. It was a great story. I'm gonna speed through it because I don't want to get too hung up on my wonderful narratives. But um, she was exploring a lake where the party knows that there's an artifact. She's a druid, so she wild shapes into an octopus. She's a druid and it's magic, so you can exist anywhere, but there's no octopi in freshwater lakes. So she swims down, finds this mermaid village, pokes around there for a little bit, and then starts to swim out deeper into the lake towards where they believe this treasure to be. And Callie is a new role player, so she wasn't like, oh, I'm stealth while I'm doing this. So she's just an octopus deep miles away from shore in the lake and gets skewered by a marrow spear. And then she fights it a little bit underwater, gets knocked out. Um, as her eyes are fading to black, she can see behind the marrow a group of a few mermaids with tridents. The mermaids end up saving her because they followed her because she was an octopus in a freshwater lake, and that was weird. And so the party goes out on a boat and interacts with the mermaids to get her back and decides to keep exploring for this artifact that they believe to be there. And so they are going out on the boat when 5 marrow pop out of the water and start to attack them. And one of the marrow's abilities are that they throw a harpoon and can pull you 20 feet in a direction. And it was a pretty small boat, and so lots of the people were near edges and got yanked into the water. After Katrana was pulled up onto the boat and was healed by the bard, how did it go? The She got pulled into the water by the marrow and managed to. The bard threw a rope, got her back in the boat, healed her a little bit, and then it was Katrana's turn. So I was like, all right, Katrana, what do you want to do? And Callie says, "Oh, I'm cowering in fear at the bottom of the boat with PTSD. Like I fought one of these things, like 60 feet underwater. It was way deeper than it was like 200 feet underwater, and it killed me before, and I just got pulled into the water with them again. So I am in the fetal position, like shaking, trying to be okay." I was like, "Are you sure that's what you want to use your turn for?" And everyone around the table was like, "No, you should do things." And she was like, "Nope, I'm traumatized." And I was like, "All right, DM inspiration. That's awesome. Like role playing psychological problems. I think that is wonderful when people get that deep into character." I have a second example. I don't know if you wanted to say anything.
I don't have one, but
Okay.
how are we doing on time?
We're all right.
This is weird because I don't see the video, so I don't.
Oh, right. We are at an hour and 18 minutes.
Okay.
So we got time.
You're just gonna soak up all the time before we get to the things we don't like. So I have like 3 seconds.
No, we're not on a time crunch as much as we used to be. So
Okay.
if we need to go a little over an hour and a half, that's okay.
Okay.
The other story that is very, very clear is when they got back from that boat expedition. No, it was the day before Katrana went out into the lake. The party had a dwarf barbarian, kind of blood rager. I let him mix a little bit of stuff over from Pathfinder, and he was playing with a hermit crab on the beach in front of the manor of the woman that they were seeing at this lakeside town. And so the next session, Connie, the bard, played by my friend James, he has a poem or song that he wrote for Clue being like playing with the shell, and it was this adorable thing, and he was the bard, so he kind of sung it to the group. And that's another like boom DM inspiration. Like that's awesome. You have brought a sense of realism to the table, and it's very cool to be able to reward that. And you could do that in any system, I guess. It's not exclusive to 5e. But this was the first system that introduced that to me, at least. So, big fan of that. Other stuff that I love, real quick, is that it is pretty easy to learn. I've used it in professional employment before, so I've run groups for youth receiving social support from the state. I've run it from youth in mental health not institutions who are receiving community mental health supports. Um, it's easy enough for people to grasp if I put the character sheet. I have pre-gen character sheets I use for stuff like that, and if I put a sheet in front of 6 different people, we can sort of go around and answer everybody's questions, and everybody sort of knows what's going on, how to play, and what the stuff on their sheet means in like 15 to 20 minutes. So that's pretty good. And then we talked about support a lot, but if there are ever questions or disagreements at the table, the golden rule of any tabletop RPG is that the DM or GM's word is basically the word of God, and and what they say goes. However, sometimes it is fun to try to figure out how it would actually work according to the rules, and given that D&D is so popular and so widespread, there are lots of, hey, can you use mold earth to do this? Can you use mage hand to do that? And if you're really lucky with your issue, there are tweets from Jeremy Crawford posted on several different places online, that basically can be treated like they were written in one of the books. Like if Crawford says it, that's the way it is. Um, so those are a couple things that I really like about 5e. What don't you like about it? Well, and
So
we should have done the don't like first. Put
no,
a
no,
sour
you,
taste in
you didn't
everybody's
even
mouth.
you didn't even ask me what I like about it.
Well, it's all right. Sorry. What do you like? I didn't expect you to have things.
So I don't hate 5e. One of the things is I kind of like playing the more exotic games, right? So
Definitely.
the more mainstream 5e becomes, the less um attractive it is for me personally.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I thought that too a little bit when it started to get really popular with Critical Role and Stranger Things bringing it like very
Yeah.
very strongly to the mainstream. I was like, "Oh no, now everybody and their mom's going to be playing it. It's not going to be cool anymore."
Right.
Like
Lousy casuals ruining my MMO, right?
I know, I'm
That kind
terrible.
of that kind of mentality. So it
I'm
is, but I it is mainstream. So if you want to play a game, you can sit down, and again, it's accessible. People understand it. You can play it. There are rules for lots of situations that you don't have to do a lot of thinking or creating. You can just go, okay, what's the rule on that?
right.
That's a double-edged sword. We'll talk more about that when we get to the things you don't like. Um, I am really enamored with portions of the canon, right? So,
Oh, you totally
um,
are.
uh, you know,
Mr. owns every frickin' book.
I don't own every book. The new hardback isn't out in paperback yet, so I'm missing the latest edition of the Drist book. But yeah, Drow elves, fabulous. The and that again, so these are kind of they're double. A lot of these are the reasons I love 5e are also some of the reasons I think that 5e can be a challenging game to play.
Well, okay,
Okay,
that's all right. Bullet points it.
so
We'll do pros and cons of each point. How about that?
So as far as one of the things there's lots of rules in 5e. Um
Well, there's less rules in 5e than there were in 3.5, for
that's
instance.
true. Yep, there's less rules in 5e than there are in Pathfinder. Pathfinder first edition. But I think one of the problems I have with the rules is that they can be dense, and if you have different players with different knowledge levels, that can create um,
Hmm.
situations where a player doesn't think to ask for an opportunity of attack,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So there's this rule in 5e: if you're engaged with a target and you're in melee range and you're punching the crap out of each other, and the person you're punching or stabbing or clobbering with your mace, whatever, decides to turn around and go someplace else, they're going to walk away from you, right? You get this thing called an opportunity of attack. Or you're
Well,
standing in the hallway and the goblin's done fight tries to run away and they run within your melee range, you, even if though it's not
s-
your turn.
so it's not. It's only when they leave. It's only you only get an attack of opportunity when they enter, if you have a feat or ability that lets you do that.
Okay.
Typically,
Well,
it's
I
just
play.
when they leave
I
your
I
threatened
my
zone.
cavalier usually gets locked down, and that gives him all
Oh,
sorts of,
yep,
like, oh, you're within melee range. Stop.
yep, that's one. S-
It's hilarious.
So
It's
that's you. So disparity in knowledge between players is a negative for you.
so I think if there's disparity in player knowledge level, the amount of rules can become challenging. Like one player has kind of, we talked a little bit about metagaming, but one player has this
Hmm.
idea of how they're going to play their character, and they've got all of their rules kind of worked out, and you've got another player who's more method actor, character development. They get into a combat situation and, okay, roll for initiative. Okay, roll for that ability. Okay, now what are you going to do on your turn, kind of thing. Um
And they they attack, but they don't know that they can move after they attack, or they
right,
don't know that they have a bonus action.
or they don't know the difference, right, they don't know the difference between a free action, a bonus action, and a movement and a main action. And again, right, I just, how many of those actions, what do we just talk about? Free actions, bonus
Four: free,
actions,
bonus,
main
main,
action,
move.
and move. And but those are four things. And what order do you do them in, and how many do you
Any
have?
order
And
you choose, one of each unless otherwise stated by a ability or feature.
yes, but how long have you been playing? Yeah, yeah,
Um,
right.
a, a while, not quite since launch, but
Right. But so yeah, I mean, again, and if we go back to the support, like if you had cards or you had some of the third party add-ons, you can help those players kind of bridge that gap. But I think having rules for lots of stuff is cool, but it can also be something that, I, when we get those disparate player knowledges, that's one of the things I don't like about the game.
sure.
It
Uh,
doesn't necessarily handle that well.
so I
Everyone,
kind of like that because, like, especially if I'm running a group for new people, I
yep,
like having somebody else there who does have that knowledge, who can sort of help out.
yep,
Um, and having somebody there who's asking, like, hey, do I get advantage for this? Is this a disadvantage? Can I use this thing now? Encourages other people to know that it's okay to ask questions, even if you're asking, can I have advantage every turn? It's like, don't do that. But
right,
at least you learn that engaging is okay. And I like
okay,
having somebody
no,
at the table who can model that besides me, because even though it's not supposed to feel like players versus DM, especially for new players, that's just how they make that distinction in their head. Human beings so often want to create an us and a them. So having somebody there to sort of break that down really helps, at least
okay.
new players and new DMs, I think.
So the amount of canon is also both a double-edged sword.
Sure. We should
Right?
have formatted this section differently.
That's all right.
That's okay.
Um, so right, as you point out, if there is a dark elf involved in a published work from Wizards of the Coast, it is probably on my bookshelf or in my Kindle
Probably. So
or
like
both.
99.9%.
Right? So I have an affinity for the dark elves. I don't know why. I just think they're fantastic. Actually, one of my very first, I probably my third D&D character ever was a dark elf cavalier who was chaotic good. And this is before R.A. Salvatore wrote his books, right? This is 1985,
You did it before it was cool.
right? Um, and right, he had rejected the matriarchy. He was a little bit more violent than Driss, and a little less introspective. He was, I was in high school, so he was looking to have some concubines and take back his pride from being mistreated by females and lots of other adolescent stuff going on back then. But
And now you're married to what is essentially a matron mother.
matron mother, we all obey the matron mother of House Skoda.
Yep.
Uh, so so
we
so
get it. You're into elves and
and
dwarves.
drow elves.
Yep.
But if when I
Anything
play with
underground, huh?
other characters, like, so we're again, I'm playing in a game, and someone saw
And
the art of the drow elves and said, oh, that's cool, dark elves, I'll be one. And so we're role playing, and I'm a dark elf male and they're a dark elf female. So and people are not nice to us because we're on the surface, and I understand why people aren't nice to us. And the other character's like, why is that shopkeeper like trying to rip us off? And it's like, because they're Iblith. And she goes, what's that? It's like, that's the drow word for offal, for butcher scraps, for garbage. Like, they're surfacers, we hate them. And she's like, I don't hate surface people. It's like, so you're a drow. Your backstory is that you're from this city, which is
well,
and so, but that's
even
again,
then, the player has the choice over what their character is.
yes.
I know it's really hard because you are
It's
so immersed in the dark
it
elf
is
fantasy.
it
But
again, but like, so it would be like a dwarf who doesn't like beer.
right, but that hat, like, you could do that, and
No,
those
you
make
can,
super interesting characters.
they can, but the yes, but that's, again, this is one of those reasons why sometimes fifth edition playing 5e is a struggle for me, because right, I I don't have a Dale Reckoning calendar, but I have an idea of when things happened on the timeline. Right, Chednazad is destroyed, Menzoberranzan is ruled by Quenethel Bainra. Like, there are things that have happened. Right, Jarlaxle is in. He's the power in Luskan. Right there, if you read the storybooks, like, there are all these things that are kind of happening, and certain things make sense, and then certain things seem weird, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's hard when you've spent like hours reading and learning about that world, and then someone comes along and says, "Oh, but mine's not that
Right.
exactly." Or
Yeah,
we're not playing in that year. Like it,
yeah,
it
we're in Narnia, and we're happy the White Witch has made it snow because we love to ski. We love cross country skiing, so we're not sure why everyone's mad at the White Witch. It's like, really?
right, like if you're going to play in a canon, you kind of need for other people at the table to buy into that canon.
Sure. And I think that's one of the problems with D&D. And again, this isn't, I don't hate the game,
Not
but
problem, but disadvantage,
it's a
right?
disadvantage,
Or
right?
quirk.
It's one of those things that makes the game a little bit more challenging, is that it is so mainstream and lots of people are coming to it, and there's a different level of investing in the canon, right? And believe me, I do not like going into a friendly local game store and picking up a book and having, like, the comic book guy from The Simpsons go, right, oh, you don't want to play the Necron army in 40K because they have this disadvantage, and their dice probability is blah blah blah, right? And they're reading you the riot act why the book you have in your hand sucks, and you're like,
Don't you want me to buy this?
silent, no, and it's not, it's usually not the people behind the counter, it's usually the other shoppers, but it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Look, man, Necrons are silent, soulless killing machines from billions of years in the past. What's not to love? Oh no, because they're terrible to play. They're a lousy army, and you need no talent to paint them. It's like, dude, you
Right.
don't
So
even know me. I could
you're
be a shitty painter.
you want the fluff and they want the crunch,
Right.
you know? And
So,
you got to have
so
people that sort of align for those things.
sure. So that's the other, and then I'm trying to think of another. I mean, it's
No, I think that's we talked about it a little bit in last episode when I was talking about like why I homebrew, and
right.
part of it is to get away from all of that canon that everybody already knows. And I spent a little while talking about loves, like, oh no, it's really cool that everyone knows what they're getting themselves into and gets excited for it. But I don't know that I meant canon. I think I meant, mechanically, experience wise, because
Mhm.
my canon is entirely original. It's my entire own world, and
Sure.
um, I did that in part so that players couldn't sit down to the table and be like, okay, I'm a dark elf, I'm true neutral, and I hate surfacers. It's like, well, hold on now, because under elves in my realm do this, 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 and this, and they don't
Right.
hate surfacers. They're mostly anti elf kind because they were left to die after they begun to explore down. Like I have a whole history for them, but
Right.
I
So
like that the players couldn't necessarily do that without asking questions about the world. Um,
I'm gonna the other thing I don't like so one of the things I don't like is that the game mechanics and some of like they use Vancian magic, and we can talk about magic systems in another show, but it's
yeah,
basically
what does that
you
mean?
So Jack Vance is an author. He created a number of fantasy novels, and the original magic system in Dungeons and Dragons is based on that fantasy setting where I memorize a spell, and the moment I cast it, it leaves my memory. Right. So
Oh,
that's why
okay,
you
that's
have
spell
that's why you
slots.
have spell slots, and that's why you prepare spells.
Today I
And
learned.
they stay in your mind until you cast them, and then you have to go back to your spell book or your scroll or however you acquire your spells and memorize them again. Um, a lot of the cool things your character can do have a cooldown, to borrow a video game
Yeah.
terminology. So you get the 5 minute workday.
Yes. Yep.
Okay,
We
so
introduced that
the and we talked a
last
little
time.
bit about that, but mechanically, fifth edition is and I see it in the show notes here. It's geared toward the murder hobo. The party gets
the,
together.
the
They
notes say heroic fantasy monster slaying,
yeah,
not murder.
that's that guy over there has something we need, or
Let's go
we've been
kill him.
told to get rid of that troop of goblins. We're gonna go over there, beat the crap out of them, take their stuff, and then okay, so you started from the village at sunrise. Well, let's call that 7 a.m. We'll make the math easy, right? It takes you 2 hours to walk into the forest. It takes you another hour to find the goblins. The combat takes about 3 minutes. It's 5 minutes after 10. Or let's say it takes you 20 minutes to rifle through everybody's crap, right? So you're looking at what,
Right.
10:30 ish? Um, wow, we'd like a long rest. It's like bullshit. No, it's not even lunchtime.
Right.
you
Yeah,
know?
and
So
that's often a DM thing too, right? So we've kind of restructured this section, but uh, that's you dislike it because it creates that
right,
pattern.
the the way the mechanics and some of the rules are written, it creates this pattern where I blow all of my, second wind, and I cast a bunch of spells, and I do my bardic inspiration. Like everybody has these things that happen, and then they all reset at a long rest. And sometimes I think that's appropriate as a DM. If it's 10 a.m., they're in the first cave, and they just get the shit kicked out of them, right? The goblins just beat the snot out of them. It's a really tough fight. And I think about that. It's like, man,
Sure.
if you have a really tough event, right? Sporting event or boxing, like I used to do karate when I was younger, and if you had a really tough fight, like, yeah, I'm done for this karate lesson. Like
Right, like
I'm
30 seconds of getting punched in the face is a lot.
is a lot, right? My nose is bleeding, and no, I'm gonna sit the next couple sparring rounds out. And yeah, there were a couple of nights where I got kicked someplace, or I got thrown and my shoulder hurt, and I just I'm gonna do some stretches and call it a night. And
Yeah.
and right, but
So
that's
that's sort
so
of where you get the short rest in there too.
right. So the long rest and the short rest,
A little distinction.
but the mechanics again kind of push you to that 5-minute workday. We go, we do the one, we have that first encounter, we blow all of our cool abilities, and then we like
So you just need to be a DM that doesn't create that sort of scenario necessarily.
right.
Like you're you can also you can rules as written, you can only take rests when it is relatively safe to do so. So
Sure.
theoretically, you're in a dungeon, the DM could just rule it's not safe to take a rest. Like you can set a watch and you'll get woken up by patrolling goblins every 4 hours, 2 or 3 hours. Um, so like sure you gain the benefits of a long rest, like you've been out of combat long enough to gain your spells and hit points, but you also suffer a level of exhaustion because you didn't really get rest.
Right.
um, so like there are ways to make that not happen, and I don't want a blanket statement like, oh, if that is happening it's the DM's fault, but
No,
I
because this, like I said, some of the situations are, that was our first go round, and it was a really tough fight. We had no clue the
right,
goblins were going to be. So,
you might
what
have
would you
crummy
normally do? It's like,
rolls.
yep, we're gonna pick up and we're gonna go back to town. We're gonna lick our wounds. We might try to find better weapons. Maybe we'll hire some retainers, get some meat shields out in front of us, and then try it again.
Sure.
Um, but that's kind of, yeah. So that's one of the things I don't. Other systems have better ways of handling that um, mechanically, where 5e kind of still has that 10-minute workday
Okay.
uh,
Yeah.
idea. So yeah,
No,
that's kind of
that's fair. I am aware of that concept, so I actively work against it. But if you were a newer DM and you were like, I don't know what to do, like my players have spent all of their spell slots and they've done all of their actions, and um, it's they woke up to a dragon landing in the town and they killed. Like, what do I do? Like, I can't just let him sleep. Like, you could, but there are that's DM
so if
skill,
they
right? You
right
have
and
scenarios and you can come up with different things like, oh, that if a dragon lands in the middle of the town and you defeat that, the rest of the day is spent, harvesting, collecting. Maybe people will come to research the dragon. Like it's kind of
right,
downtime,
the villagers might come out and thank you for kicking the crap out of the dragon,
right? And now you're
or
feasting and celebrating and
you might help look for survivors inside the dragon probably broke a bunch of buildings. You may spend the rest of the day looking for survivors, or helping the townsfolk, or putting out a fire.
yeah.
None of that requires spell slots or that kind of stuff.
Right.
So
I think for that, you have to be comfortable with creating like the role playing scenarios. And
right.
one thing that I don't love about 5e is like we said in the show notes, it says that it's often geared towards heroic fantasy monster slaying.
Murder
Um,
hobo.
Murder hoboing, sure. And mechanically, systematically, it can be a little bit harder to adapt to more RP heavy, non-violence oriented campaigns and adventures. Whereas something like you mentioned Blue Rose and I mentioned Ten Candles earlier, like those are more RP heavy systems. So 5e is harder to it's harder to feel successful doing that necessarily, because you're not rolling all the dice and adding all the numbers, which lots of people like.
Yeah. I think
Um,
one of the other challenging things I find with 5e is the and this is more of a session zero issue, but the reason for the party to be a party, and a lot of times that feels forced. Um,
so again, it is a session zero thing, and I also
yeah.
think it is a that's a pretty heavy DM thing where like you can have everybody. You can do the tavern start, right? I
Yep.
first and foremost, I don't want to disparage people from doing that because that's how people meet in real life is at the bar, and that's how adventuring parties meet in lots of um, contemporary media, I guess. So I don't want to disparage the tavern start, but I think that is pretty solely up to the DM and to the players' backstories. Where if potentially players want to be siblings, well, now we know why those players have met. Or maybe your party met over the course of a period of time that the DM is going to sort of describe how that had happened before. Um, so yeah, that's definitely a DM issue, but
Yeah,
I don't
but
think it's a 5e issue.
well, so 5e again, 5e has this broad menu of race class combinations, right? And some races and classes uh, are counterproductive, right? They don't work well together.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
they
but
can,
that
right? But it's backstory dependent.
it's backstory dependent and it's player canon knowledge dependent and a bunch of there's a lot of variables there, right?
Right. A
And I
dwarf druid is certainly uncommon.
right, and a dwarf druid hanging out with a drow ranger, um, chaotic evil drow ranger would be very weird, and there'd be need to be some kind of reason for that. And your party and your DM session zero, you could work out why that is. There are other game systems that help you resolve that. Why is the party a party cleaner than 5e? That's all I'm saying.
Sure,
Right.
sure.
I'm not
And
saying, oh yeah, 5e sucks because you throw these random people together in a bar and then they have to go kick the crap out of some
no,
goblins.
I
Right.
know.
That's yes, that can happen in 5e and you can have a tremendous fun time doing that. But a lot of 5e adventures, they start off and it's like, okay, you're in a bar. It's like the old Ale's wife video on YouTube, right?
Yes.
There's an elf in front of you. Whoa!
Whoa.
Oh, who are you? You can talk to each other now. It's like, what's going on?
Hello,
Where
hello.
where in the One Ring, for example, there's a whole set of rules about fellowship and how to build the party's called a fellowship, right? Fellowship of the Ring, and there's rules and mechanics around it. And in
Sure.
Glorantha, RuneQuest Glorantha, you role play traditionally as a tribe, so you are all player characters of a same tribe and more often than not related.
Okay.
And you are going on this quest for a specific spiritual or mythic. uh it's very very mythical. um Call of Cthulhu handles that. You're a random smattering of people by throwing you into some kind of tentacled monstered mess, or this guy in the diner late at night opens up this book and oh my gosh, right, this weird thing is happening, and you're
Right.
thrown together based on the situation. Um,
So you can do all of those things in five. So
you can
yes,
do
I
all of
want to
those
drag
things
it
in
back.
5e, but it's not part of the mechanics of 5e. Does that
I
make sense?
Yeah, I guess so. Um, I'm gonna. If you are looking for a 5e solution to the tavern start, there is a 1d12 places to start an adventure besides a tavern post up at the Red Hoodie Games blog, which I will put a link to um, in the description of this. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, that's pretty good. Have you seen that? Have you read that yet?
I have not. I'll check it out after this.
Okay. Um, Man, I feel like we kind of got to not a negative note, but some critiques there at the end, which are good because a lot of those were, like you said, sort of double-edged swords, where it really depends on like how the DM uses it. So I feel like for a new DM, it would be helpful to know those things so that you can start to get ahead of them before they become something that you grow not to like about it.
Sure. And not, yeah, I mean, 5e is a good game,
It
right?
is totally.
It,
It's
it's
very, very solid.
super popular. It wouldn't be as if it was a bad game and people did not have fun playing it, right? It would not be as popular.
Right.
I can't think of a bad game that people keep playing for no good reason. Monopoly.
Yes, and again, it's just popular. Well, see,
It's
no,
just,
that's a game that's bad that's popular.
yeah, but I think people play Monopoly because everybody knows how to play Monopoly.
And it's more about the people and the experience that you have than the system anyway. So like if
Yeah.
you've got good people, you can play 5e or Pathfinder or Call of Cthulhu or whatever and still have a good time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really. I'm trying to rack my brain for a terrible role play game, like one that I would tell people like, I
Just
wouldn't play
don't.
that.
All right.
Yeah, and I'm not. I mean, yeah, if you gave me a choice between playing 5e and DCC, I'd probably pick DCC.
So for me, that just depends on who I'm playing with. Like if
And
it's
that well,
am I playing
that's
5e or DCC with my group? Because my group would have a better time with 5e.
with
But like
5e.
if I'm down at your house and we're sitting around with Callie and Maddie and whoever, like yeah,
DCC
I'll
is the
play
way to go.
DCC, no
Yeah.
problem. Right? That's quick. It's easy. We can get it on the table. It makes sense. There's like yeah.
we don't we don't really care about the characters. That's the and that's actually one of the
Yep.
things about 5e. I think that is again another one of those double-edged swords.
This will be the last one. Make it count.
O- Okay, is that you can get really invested in your character, or you can just play a throwaway.
Yeah.
And if you again, it's that disparity between a couple of the people at the table are super invested in their character. They've written long backstories. They've got lots of um, things they want to accomplish with this character. And I'm playing the bard who's looking to score with chicks.
Right.
And if he gets killed in a bar fight, whoop-de-doo, I'll roll a
It's,
cleric healer because,
or
we
I'll
don't have a healer.
or I'll roll the bard up. It was, it was his brother who returned to pick up his loot after he heard of his death. Like,
Right.
yeah,
So I think and I guess balance the key to all of these, this is the word that's coming to me right at the end, right? Perfect.
right,
Is balance. If you have balance at the table between people's knowledge of the game, love of the canon, investment with the character, um if you have balance or complementary, like you were saying, one person's really excited about it and gets other people excited about it, that's good.
yeah,
But if you just have folks that are like, yeah, whatever, if this character dies, I'll just roll another one, and I can't let this person die. Like,
right, totally.
I
I
I
have that
haven't
at my table.
I haven't achieved my social spiritual goal for this character, and if they die, then it'll be unresolved forever, kind of thing. So
So
that's kind of where I'm at with 5e. 5e, again, like I said at the very opening, is very broad and lots of stuff can happen, and that can create these disparities, this disparate skill level or disparate canon knowledge or disparate interest, right?
sure, and yeah, and that can happen. Again, I think that's a system agnostic issue,
I
and
think
it's really
other
just how the DM handles
systems
it.
I think other systems address different means and methods to handle some of that stuff.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
Um,
I think 5e is kind of generic.
yeah,
Right.
and it's kind of supposed to be, right?
Right.
Like,
Yep.
yeah,
It's approachable and generic, and it's again, it's good.
yeah. So I want to mention real quick, just because you had talking about disparate levels at the table. I've got a player at the table who, Katrana, Callie's character, when she was killed by the marrow, I did not have the mermaid saving her thought out ahead of time, but I had just given her a magic item. It's her first time playing like a longer TTRPG. I really didn't want to kill her character, and she cried when it happened, so I really didn't want it to be permanent. So like players will do that, and then I've got James playing Connie the Bard, who's like, yeah, I don't know, Connie might die. It could happen. Like, maybe he'll take a level in Paladin. Maybe if this person dies, he'll retire, and I'll play somebody. Like he's got all of these ideas about how his character is gonna be remembered and carry on when he's gone. But I don't know. I really like that as a DM because it keeps it all fresh and interesting, and different people want different levels of attention for role play and for combat at the table. So much of it comes down to the DM for me, and that's hopefully that stuff in this has been helpful to help you run
See,
great
and
games.
with a group like that, I would vector you towards 7th Sea.
All right. Well, our next deep dive will be on 7th Sea then.
Okay.
Figured that out. Don't know when we'll get to it. Maybe we'll do them like every 6th episode.
Odd 6.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But we have to wrap this one up. It is we're getting pretty pushing 2 hours here. I mean, we could sit here and talk about this all night. So
I want to have dinner.
yeah, me too. Me too. So thank you for tuning in. This has been Set the Table episode 6, in which Jack and I took a bit of a deep dive into D&D 5th edition. If you would like to ask a question, make a comment on the show, feel free to do so through whatever review, comment, through however platform you are watching. Feel free to tweet at us. I am at jmskoda5 on Twitter, or you can tweet at Red Hoodie Games, our wonderful producers. You can also shoot us an email at jmskoda52@gmail.com if you want to ask a question and have us answered on the show. Otherwise, I will provide the link for 1d12 places to start an adventure besides a tavern, available at redhoodiegames5.wordpress.com. And if you want to support the show any more than checking out the content, please head on over to patreon.com/Skoda. That's Skoda. And anything that you can do to support us is fantastic. So thanks again for listening, and we will see you next time.
Good day.